They are not fully human. That's what French President Emmanuel Macron said when talking about Africans. He didn't whisper it, he didn't hide it, he said it like it was a fact. To him and to many like him Africa is still a place to take from, a land of gold, oil, and diamonds but not of people worth respecting. For decades, Western companies came to Africa, took everything, and left us with poverty, sickness, and silence. But on March 15, something happened that changed everything. In Burkina Faso, at exactly 6 a.m., elite forces raided 7 luxury hotels. They arrested the CEOs of the world's biggest mining companies, men who thought they were untouchable. These were billionaires who had stolen from the people for over 50 years. And leading this operation was one man, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Copyright, a young African leader who didn't ask for permission. He demanded justice and got it. For the first time in modern history, Africa stood up and said, enough, no more stolen gold, no more stolen futures. This is the story of how it happened and why it matters for every African, everywhere. Stay with us, because this isn't just news, this is history. For over 50 years, a quiet crime unfolded beneath the soil of Burkina Faso. While children walked barefoot on red dirt roads and mothers waited hours for clean water, billions of dollars in gold were being pulled from the ground and flown straight into Western vaults. Year after year, foreign mining companies dug deeper, extracting the riches of the land, while giving almost nothing in return. On paper, it looked like business. In truth, it was theft. The names were known across the industry: Goldmax Corporation, Western Gold Mining, Pacific Resources, and more. They wore sharp suits, hosted banquets, and smiled in photographs with ministers, but behind closed doors, they were masters of manipulation. They underreported production, faked invoices, used child labor, and bribed officials at the highest levels of government. And no one stopped them. No one even tried. In 2019, Goldmax extracted over $500 million worth of gold from the Topako mine. But when tax season came, they declared only $5 million in revenue. How? By claiming that only 10% of their actual production existed. They pulled 10 tons of gold a day but only reported 1. The rest vanished through private airstrips and hidden shipments. Over time, this system drained over $500 billion from the country with only $10 billion ever reaching the national treasury. Burkina Faso was not alone. All across Africa, similar schemes operated with impunity. These companies believed they were too big, too rich, too protected to ever be held accountable. And for decades, they were right. They gave bribes instead of taxes. They displaced villages instead of paying rent. They polluted rivers, broke communities, and buried the truth beneath contracts and silence. But the people were watching. They knew their children were dying young. Their schools were crumbling. Their lands were poisoned, all while foreign CEOs lived in palaces built on African soil. And one man, one soldier, one voice said, enough. Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Copyright didn't wait for permission from the West. He ordered a full-scale audit of every mining company in the country. He created a legal task force made up of international lawyers, forensic accountants, and anti-corruption investigators. They dug through 10 years of records line by line, loophole by loophole. What they found was staggering: massive fraud, fake payrolls, hidden assets, secret deals. Worse still, they uncovered internal memos where executives mocked the people. Some emails referred to local workers as stupid natives. Others bragged about how easy it was to bribe officials. One line read, "We can make them dance for dollars." Another, "These people don't live long anyway." That wasn't just corruption, that was contempt. And it was about to end. Captain Ibrahim knew he had to act, not just for justice, but for dignity, for history, for Africa. What came next wasn't a protest, or a press release. It was a precise, powerful operation that would shake the entire world. But before the arrests, Before the cameras, before the trial there was the truth, buried deep in the earth, hidden beneath forged documents and stolen wealth. The empire they built beneath our feet was about to collapse, and the world had no idea what was coming next. The world saw the headlines: CEOs dragged from luxury hotels in handcuffs. But what most people never saw was the storm that had been quietly building behind the scenes. Captain Ibrahim Traoré copyright did not act on impulse. What happened on March 15 was not chaos. It was a masterstroke, months in the making. It began with silence. 6 months before the arrests, President Traoré copyright launched an internal operation under the codename Sovereign Dust. There were no leaks, no press conferences, just quiet work done in the shadows. He commissioned a full forensic audit of all foreign mining companies in Burkina Faso. Every ounce of gold, every transaction, every hidden deal. He brought in international legal experts, drone surveillance teams, and satellite analysts. They tracked shipments, monitored private airstrips, planted informants inside company offices and mine sites. Nothing was left to chance. By month 3, the findings were devastating. Companies like Goldmax were underreporting their output by as much as 90%. 9 out of every 10 ounces of gold were being smuggled, stolen, hidden behind complex accounting tricks and fake documentation. Traoré copyright task force collected mountains of evidence: real names, real dates, hard numbers. There was no way to deny it. But Traoré copyright wasn't done. He ordered every mining company to submit 10 years' worth of financial records or face immediate license revocation. While they hesitated, his team worked day and night. Accountants highlighted inconsistencies, lawyers built criminal cases, engineers compared satellite data with production claims. Traoré copyright himself reviewed files personally. He wasn't just leading an investigation, he was building a case page by page, stamp by stamp. Then came the strike. At exactly 6 a.m. on March 15th, Burkina Faso's elite forces mobilized. 7 luxury hotels across Ouagadougou were simultaneously raided. The coordination was flawless. Victor Pro, CEO of Goldmax, was pulled from his suite in pajamas. He had tried to alert his private security, but the building had already been sealed. At the airport, Jean-Claude Dubois of Western Gold Mining attempted to flee aboard his private jet. Traoré copyright had already shut down the country's airspace. Dubois was intercepted and arrested en route. In a nearby conference room, Michael Thompson of Pacific Resources was frantically trying to wire money out of the country when officers stormed in. His open laptop became key evidence. None escaped. Every angle had been covered. Informants, surveillance, border control, even foreign embassies were caught off guard. Within hours, the mining industry's most powerful men were behind bars, and Traoré copyright's message to them was cold, clear, and final: return what you stole, or spend the rest of your life in prison. The nation was stunned, the continent shaken, Western governments panicked. But inside Burkina Faso, something else was rising: a pride, hope, a sense that, maybe for the first time in living memory, someone was finally fighting for the people. Then came Traoré copyright's press conference. He didn't shout, he didn't gloat, he simply held up a folder thick with documents and said, "This is your proof. For 50 years, they robbed us while we stayed silent. That silence ends now." And with that, Africa's greatest heist was finally exposed. But it was only the beginning. The courtroom was waiting, and justice was coming. The world had never seen anything like it. 7 of the most powerful corporate men on earth, now seated in a courtroom in Ouagadougou, their suits replaced by plain prison uniforms. No private jets, no lawyers whispering in the ears of presidents, just the cold, undeniable weight of justice. But this was no ordinary courtroom. Captain Traoré copyright made sure of that. He established a special international tribunal, independent, transparent, and deeply African. The bench was composed of 7 judges, 3 from Africa, 2 from Asia, 2 from Latin America, not a single Western official, no influence from the countries that once looted the continent. The message was loud and clear. This trial would not be outsourced. Africa would judge its own wounds. From day one, the charges came heavy and hard. Victor Pro of Goldmax faced 234 counts from tax evasion and bribery, to environmental destruction and human rights violations. Jean-Claude Dubois of Western Gold was hit with 189 charges, including the use of child labor. Michael Thompson of Pacific Resources faced the darkest of them all, unknowingly poisoning rivers with cyanide-based mining methods, resulting in over 2,000 civilian deaths from cancer and contaminated water. But what shook the courtroom most wasn't the charges, it was the testimony. One by one, the victims stepped forward, not statistics, not numbers. People. Musa or Urugo, a young man of 23, shared how he had begun working in the mines at just 8 years old. He couldn't breathe without coughing. He paused often, fighting for air, his lungs ruined by years underground. They stole my childhood. They stole my health. They took everything from me, he said through tears. Then came Mariam Kaut, a 70-year-old grandmother. Her entire village had been bulldozed to make room for a new mine. Our ancestors are buried in that land, she whispered. And they gave me $100. That's all. $100 to destroy my family's history. The courtroom fell silent. Reporters lowered their cameras. Some of the judges had tears in their eyes. These weren't just business crimes. These were crimes against humanity. Internal emails uncovered during the investigation were read aloud. Goldmax executives referred to locals as stupid natives. Western Gold's board had joked, "Why pay one adult $100 when we can pay 10 kids $10 each?" And they never complain. Pacific Resources had circulated instructions on how to dump chemical waste directly into rivers. One memo read, "They won't live long enough to trace the cancer back to us." And then, the final blow, corruption at the highest levels of government. The court revealed it in 2015. Burkina Faso's own Minister of Energy, Marc Carbouf, accepted a $50 million bribe from Goldmax in exchange for slashing tax rates. The country lost $2 billion a year as a result. In 2017, the brother of former President Carbouf accepted $100 million in bribes from Western Gold to secure mining licenses on ancestral land. That decision displaced over 50,000 villagers. Traoré tilde copyright sat in the courtroom every day, not behind a desk, not in an office, but in the front row, shoulder to shoulder with the people. He listened, he took notes, he looked the accused in the eyes. Outside the courthouse, a sea of citizens gathered daily, banners waved, chants rose, "Our gold is ours." Across the continent, Africa watched, and then, after months of hearings, the verdict came, guilty, every single one of them. Victor Pro, 50 years in prison, $10 billion in fines. Jean-Claude Dubois, 45 years, $8 billion in penalties. Michael Thompson, life in prison, no parole. Robert McKenzie, 40 years for forced displacement. James Harrison, 55 years for child labor. Peter Williams, 60 years for environmental devastation. David Anderson, life without parole for funding militant groups. But Traoré tilde copyright wasn't finished. The court didn't just hand out sentences, it handed out justice. All private assets owned by the convicted were seized. Yachts, private jets, offshore accounts, luxury homes, and art collections gone. The court ruled that every dollar from those asset sales would go not to the state, not to the government, but directly to the families of the victims. And on the courthouse steps, with cameras rolling and the world watching, President Traoré tilde copyright spoke words that would be etched into history. "Today, we didn't just put 7 men on trial, we put 500 years of colonial theft on trial. And today, we won." When the gavel fell, The world was stunned. But Traoré copyright was already thinking ahead. Justice in the courtroom was not the end, it was just the beginning. What came next was something Africa hadn't seen in generations. A full-blown economic revolution led by Africans, for Africans. Within weeks of the verdict, every single asset tied to the convicted mining giants was frozen. Their shares dropped to zero. Their operations in Burkina Faso were officially terminated. No appeals, no negotiations, no deals behind closed doors. Then came the biggest move of all. The creation of the Burkina Faso National Mining Company, a fully state-owned operation designed to take back control of the country's gold, not for foreign billionaires, not for puppet regimes, but for the people. 70% of the company's revenue went straight into development, not promises. Real change. In just 12 months, the results were staggering. 500 new schools rose across the country. 200 hospitals opened their doors to the sick and elderly. 5,000 kilometers of paved roads connected once isolated villages. Clean water reached 3 million people. Electricity was installed in over 2,000 rural communities. Worker salaries increased tenfold from $50 a month to $500. Child labor was banned permanently, and mine safety standards, world-class. Every miner received protective gear, training, and benefits that had never been offered under foreign rule. This wasn't just reform, this was restoration, the return of dignity long denied, now declared. The change was visible. In once forgotten villages, children who used to dig for gold were now learning to read. Clinics treated illnesses that had gone ignored for decades. Mothers no longer walked miles for clean water. Grandfathers watched their grandchildren dream bigger than they ever could. The nation sang Traoré copyright's name not out of fear, but out of faith. And yet, as the Western media called him a dictator, a populist, a threat to order, the streets of Burkina Faso told a different story. Africa was finally waking up. Traoré copyright didn't just rebuild roads and hospitals. He rewrote the system. He launched technical universities in every major mining region. Young people no longer had to leave their homeland to become engineers, chemists, or geologists. They could train in their own villages, surrounded by family, culture, and identity. Over 10,000 students enrolled, fully funded by state scholarships. Not a single student paid a penny. But the ripple didn't stop at the borders. In Mali, 5 mining CEOs were arrested. In Guinea, the government nationalized bauxite production. In Niger, uranium mines went under full state control. The continent had caught the flame. What started in Burkina Faso became a domino wave of justice across Africa. And foreign investors? They panicked. Stocks crashed. The Goldmax Corporation lost 70% of its market value overnight. Western gold mining was sold for scraps. Pacific Resources collapsed entirely. In Europe, chaos, closed-door meetings, emergency calls, and then came the threats. French President Emmanuel Macron, the same man who once dismissed Africans as less than human, now warned, "You'll pay for this." He accused Burkina Faso of threatening global investment. But Traoré copyright didn't flinch. He looked into the cameras and replied, "Say colonizers, not investors. Real investors are welcome. Thieves in suits? Not anymore." The U.S. followed suit. President Biden threatened sanctions. He warned of cutting financial aid to Burkina Faso. Traoré copyright laughed. Which aid? The $100 million a year you offer? We make $10 billion from our own gold now. Keep your aid. Give it to your puppet states. And while Western powers fumed, Africa celebrated. Festivals filled the streets. Elders danced. Children sang. Flags waved. "Our gold is ours" echoed from rooftops and radios. Burkina Faso had become more than a nation. It had become a symbol of what Africa could be when it stopped begging and started building. And what of the CEOs? Forgotten, rotting in prison cells. No private chefs, no press releases, just concrete walls and cold floors. Meanwhile, their victims received something they never expected: Compensation. The court's ruling redirected all seized assets to the victims' families. Homes were rebuilt, land was restored, dignity was returned. The stories kept coming. An 11-year-old girl, once forced to dig tunnels, now leading her class in mathematics. A 65-year-old miner, once paid in scraps, now training young men in safe mining techniques. A mother who lost her home to bulldozers, now living in a new village built with gold money once stolen from her land. And Traoré tilde copyright. He didn't take a victory lap, he didn't build a palace, he continued walking the same streets, wearing the same uniform, meeting people, listening, acting. At a rally of over 100,000 people, he stood on stage and said, "We're not enemies to anyone. Our doors are open to those who trade fair and respect our people, but make no mistake, Africa's resources belong to its people. It's that simple." And that day, in the capital of a nation once called poor, the air smelled like something Africa hadn't known in centuries: freedom. The courtroom was packed. 6 months of evidence, dozens of witnesses, thousands of pages. The air was electric, not with fear, but with hope. The people of Burkina Faso had waited decades to be heard. Now justice was ready to speak. One by one, the judges read the verdicts: guilty, guilty, guilty. Every single executive was convicted, and not with slaps on the wrist, with sentences that echoed through history. Victor Petro, CEO of Goldman Sachs, 50 years in prison, $10 billion in fines. Jean-Claude Dubois, Western Gold Mining, 45 years, $8 billion in penalties. Michael Thompson of Pacific Resources, a life imprisonment, no parole. His crimes were too dark to ignore. The rivers he poisoned had killed over 2,000 people. Robert Mackenzie of Continental Gold, 40 years for forcibly displacing families. James Harrison, African Minerals, 55 years for employing children in brutal mines. Peter Williams, Global Mining Co-op, 60 years for environmental destruction. And David Anderson, Summit Resources, a life without parole for funding armed groups and fueling civil unrest. But the court didn't stop there. For the first time in global judicial history, it ordered the complete seizure of all assets tied to these men. Not just fines, not just prison. Everything was stripped: private jets, yachts, Swiss accounts, beachfront mansions, art collections, even their luxury watches. Gone. The proceeds, sent directly to the families of their victims, not to the government, not to a bureaucracy, to the people. On the courthouse steps, surrounded by elders, children, journalists, and soldiers, Traoré tilde copyright spoke. He didn't roar, he didn't gloat, he stood tall and quiet, and let the gravity of his words carry across the square. Today, he said, we didn't just put 7 men on trial, we put 500 years of colonial theft and exploitation on trial, and today we won. The crowd erupted, flags waved, elders wept. The people and the real owners of the gold, of the soil, of the suffering, finally tasted justice. But Traoré tilde copyright wasn't finished, not even close. The very next day, he signed an executive order: every last asset owned by foreign mining corporations seized. No delays, no exceptions. Every machine, every warehouse, every last grain of gold reclaimed. And in their place, he built something new, a system not based on extraction, but on contribution, a nation no longer begging for scraps, but building with strength. Within a year, the transformation was undeniable. Burkina Faso's national income tripled, the poverty rate was slashed, the economy soared. New hospitals, new schools, roads, jobs, dreams, life. Western media tried to rewrite the narrative: strongman, radical, populist. But on the ground, the truth was too loud to ignore. The people weren't surviving, they were thriving. Workers earned more, children learned more, families lived longer, farmers had tools, women had clinics, villages had light. This was no longer just a country, it was a rising power, a model, and the world took notice. In Latin America, in Asia, In the islands of the Caribbean, oppressed nations began to ask, if Burkina Faso can do it, why not us? Movements spread, contracts were challenged, exploitation was exposed, all sparked by a captain who dared to stand, a leader with no cape, no army of lobbyists, just conviction, and a people who refused to be silent any longer. And what about the final word? What legacy remains? It lives in the laughter of children once trapped in mines. It breathes in the clean rivers once choked with poison. It marches in the footsteps of workers walking home with full pay. It glows in the classrooms, in the clinics, in the roads paved with justice. It is the beginning of a new Africa. And Captain Ibrahim Traoré tilde copyright. He did not vanish. He did not rest. He woke up the next morning ready to do more, because his mission wasn't glory, it was sovereignty. He said it once, and the world remembered, our land, our gold, our future, no longer stolen, but ours.